Gibbs from Investing Against the Grain. You got Brian White from Futuraza. We're going to talk about all the things that have happened in the last week and the things that we expect to happen coming up. Big one, of course, is the Model Y refresh came out, and it looks like a big success, right? So we've got photos here of the Model Y. Looks great. New front, new rear, new underbody. Everything seems to be changed. But it's the most important thing is the sales. In China, we're reporting that the Model Y is now at 50,000 sales, at least on the first day, the launch series. And then now there's rumors that it's going to be sold in, it's going to be launched in Berlin shortly as well. Brian, why don't you kick us off? Tell us, how successful is this Model Y going to be?
This is going to go gangbusters, and I can't overstate that enough. No, here's what's going on. We're going to see a dip in Q1. Model Y production and deliveries will be down in Q1 because, of course, you have to change over the line. But that's temporary. There is surplus capacity in Berlin. There is surplus capacity in Texas. In China, there is not really surplus capacity, but what there is a simplified Model Y that will be manufactured more quickly. So even if Shanghai is down for a week or two, they will still likely have end-of-year numbers that are record high for a factory that's already consistently producing new records all the time. So what we're going to see is a dip in Q1, and then as much demand as there is, they will sell it in every market as much as they can. Because if the early opinions that I've seen on social media are accurate, for every person who says it's ugly, I'm seeing 10 people who say, I love it. It looks even better. And I'm also seeing people who say, it's a car. I don't care. Within reason, I don't care what it looks like. If this delivers on all of the improvements we saw from Highland, from the Model 3 to the Model 3 refresh, if Juniper delivers the same kind of upgrades to suspension, to quiet ride, to efficiency, then it is going to go gangbusters, and we will see a record year. And that 50,000 number that we saw as a credible rumor for first day orders, that was one day. In the last week, what has it been? Another at least 50 for sure, right? Which means 100,000. That is a sizable percentage of an entire year's run for even the Model Y, but really it's a bigger order than most cars move in an entire year anyway. So this is going to be pretty big. What do you think, Nick? Oh, or Herbert, I guess.
No. I mean, so the Model Y, right, just became the best-selling vehicle overall in China. And so it's going to just kill despite this. So, I mean, here's the comparison with the old one. I personally did not like the old version. I didn't love the look. I love this new look. So I don't know. I'm not getting where people are saying they don't like the new look. What are you thinking? How successful do you think this will be, Nick?
I think it will. I don't think success is dependent on the way it looks. I don't think success is dependent on really anything they've done. Success right now is dependent on the macro. And I think, look, we still have high rates. We still have people really overextended with debt. We still have a lot of uncertainty out there. And I think until something corrects in that world, I don't think that you're going to see a huge demand in general for automobile purchases. The only thing that I think would really, kind of change the paradigm on that would be dropping costs, more affordable vehicles, because that's a new segment. And I'm speaking from a Tesla perspective. But if you just look at worldwide auto sales, I still think that that number is going to show contraction or just be plateaued year over year until we see rates come down across the world. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what's dependent. Now, let's say that we get to that paradigm where all of a sudden things are good, financing debt is a lot more palatable. Then I think people will give vehicles like the Y or the 3, even more of a second look, because now they have a little bit of better suspension. Hey, they got a screen in the back. Hey, we like the lights inside. So I think that's where all those soft skills, if you will, come into play with the vehicle. But I think right now. It's the hard skills that matter, and the numbers have to make sense. And I think that's the biggest thing right now.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you can't argue with that, right? But I don't think it's doom and gloom. As you said, CPI reports came out, was better than expected. It's not, we're not clear or anything like that, but it's not as negative as people are saying, right? We don't know yet where this is going to go, but in general, the feeling is very positive here in the US with the new government. Anytime a new government takes over, that's always boosts up kind of expectations and optimism for the future. China seems to have kind of stabilized at this point, right? They continue to pump money in. Things there are still fairly stable. And you can see that there's two kinds of societies, right? There's the people that can afford the really expensive cars, and that's where those guys are not affected by the economy. And generally in China, the people who can afford that premium brand of Model Y will still be able to afford that in general. Okay. I'm not saying that, of course, economy affects everybody and everything, especially high assets like a car. But so far, this year is going to be, it's looking like it's going to be more likely positive than negative, is my view. But of course, we have to be cautious. Yeah.
And I would say that also, you can always run promotional interest rates. You could do a 1.9 or 2.9% interest to artificially create the impression that rates are low, just by prepaying the points on it. But to Nick's point, to support what Nick is saying, if you do that, that's 1,000 or 3,000. You can't also discount from the vehicle. If you have naturally low rates and the ability to drop the price a couple thousand, you can spur fresh demand that way. We're going to see this car should be cheaper to build, and that means they can lower the price on it or offer promotions like that. We just got to get it moving.
Yeah. And then they also launched the launch version, right? Which is much more expensive, higher end, and they're selling it in the same time as they're selling the old Model Y. So the appetite for expensive cars in China is still there. This is what's selling right now. So, you know what I mean? And Brian was saying, if they are able to lower the cost, which they might have been able to do with a new underbody, single underbody, or the more refined underbody that reduces 70 parts to one, if they can reduce that even lower and raise the prices, margins could be higher, and they can then offer that as incentives. Anyways, I get what you're saying. Of course, it's an issue, but that's what's going to drive the yearly sales globally for cars would be economy. Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah, and just real quick, because you said something earlier. To be clear, CPI was not better than expected. CPI wasn't as bad as was thought could be. So I know it's subtle, but for anyone who's watching, actually follows the market, like that's a very big difference in communication.
So I do not follow the market that closely, and I would appreciate an explanation of what you just said, because I feel like I should understand it.
Oh,
What
yeah.
what was expected? What did we get? What does it mean?
Yeah. So it started. Okay. So first of all, like the market that you've seen being selling off and all that, and you have people on here every day trying to predict, oh, why Tesla go down? It has nothing to do with Tesla. It has everything to do with what people perceive is happening with inflation. And the fear was that inflation was reigniting, and that instead of rate cuts, the Fed might have to do a rate increase again. And so yesterday we got PPI, which is price or product index, whatever it stands for. That is essentially like wholesale goods that companies use for like manufacturing, building. And that's one inflation indicator that came in cooler than expected, which is good because that shows that, hey, inflation is cooling down. Today was CPI. This is consumer price index. In other words, it's a basket of goods that is determined to be, like bread, it's different things at the grocery store, different products at Home Depot you'd buy, just general goods you would buy, and homes, rents, things like that. And it's a measure of what inflation is from that perspective. And that tends to be what most people use as inflation. That was predicted to be at 0.4 according to Dow, 0.3 according to the S&P, but it came in at a 0.3 today. So it was at expectations. As far as the S&P, it was, it came in at 0.4. So yeah, anyways, my point is it came at expectations, or it came just above expectations from what the market was expecting, but it wasn't enough that scared the market to think, oh, the Fed's gonna have to raise rates. These numbers are still too high, because to have a 2% handle, or to have a 2% annual interest rate, which is what the Fed's mandate is, or self-imposed mandate, you have to have 0.2 every single month. Some 0.1s in there as well. So the point is, today's reading was a little hot / just at expectations, but it signaled that the Fed's definitely not cutting in January. Right now, if you look at the odds, it looks like they might cut in June. March is almost 50-50. So, but it's just a gauge of where things are at, and the Fed will only cut rates if they feel like inflation's coming down towards their 2% number, which again, it's artificial. It was created in like 2010. They decided 2% was the number.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for the update on the economy. Yeah, I was taking a look at all the price hikes over the last year, of the last 4 years. It's pretty significant inflation. Whether or not they've held it, we would have loved to see clear signs, but it's not happening. Like you said, yeah, 50-50 chance is going to be a rate cut in March. And then you're saying, maybe in June, that's when they'll do it, but certainly not in January is the current thinking right now. But okay, so January 20th next week is the inauguration. Is it already built in, the excitement of this new administration to Tesla stock, Tesla's, prospects in the future? Or is this something that, is going to be a catalyst next week? And then the second question is, even with a massive, or if everything stays flat and car sales don't rise, like you're saying, possibly because of the economy, but this is the year that Tesla's going to introduce full self-driving, maybe the second half of the year. So it could be like wait till 2026, but it could also be that overcomes any flat sales in cars. And of course, it could also be that, when unsupervised FSD comes in sometime next year, that could increase sales because of demand going up regardless of the economy. Not regardless of the economy, but, if it's basically where it is today, right? Yeah, what you're thinking about coming up next week?
You go first, Brian. I'm going to try to get my camera to stop being fuzzy.
Sure. Well, coming up next week in terms of what, the earnings or?
No, the election, the inauguration.
The inauguration. I don't have expectations because I don't follow that. I don't follow politics closely enough to have a qualified opinion on it. I think, I did see a post from someone at XAI, an official account saying, or an employee at least, saying, boy, all this last minute action by the outgoing president sure seems pretty unprecedented. And I said, no, that's what happens at the end of every term. Whenever someone's leaving office, they do a bunch of things that maybe they should have done sooner that were unpopular, but it's we've been through this before. And if you're upset about the outcome, this too shall pass. And if you're super, super excited about it, maybe temper expectations, because it's a big ship and turning it can take some time.
I think everything the opposite Brian just said.
Let's hear it.
I do think it's unprecedented. I don't think you see, come on, the SEC chair's in there for what, another 5 days, and they decide to actually go through with this with Elon. All the banning drilling in the Gulf of Mexico right before going out. This whole chips,
those things have now go back to previous elections and look at the last month, the last even days and weeks in office for every president. It's the same. They do all kinds of stuff. Do you want me to stop the show and go look? I mean, because I can, but
I guess I'm just saying, if to sit here and say that I have to go look when you're telling me that it has been done, well, what is it?
All right.
Back to the question. Tesla.
What was the question again?
Inauguration next week. What's going to happen? Do people care? Typically, when there's a new administration comes in, immediately after they come in, they try to, first 90 days, implement as many policies as possible, trying to make a head start run.
Yeah. Uh, I don't know what's going to happen next year. I don't think anyone does, but I think it's exciting. I mean, you're going to have Zuck, Bezos, and Elon there. I mean, that's refreshing, right? I mean, I think this is going to be the most tech forward administration we've ever seen. Especially bringing them in like that. Let's hope it continues. I think it will, personally, but also think it's exciting to see. I mean, this is more just related to what could do to the markets, but it seems like Trump's kept his first promise with releasing the hostages and ending the Gaza Israel thing before he takes office. I mean, like, it looks like that's all happening as we speak, which is just absolutely amazing and just great for the hostages and that whole situation. So I mean, that could send a lot of confidence to the market. There's the market, I think, is the strongest when the world perceives the U.S. as leading from a point of strength. So I think who knows what could happen next week. I mean,
well, related to Tesla that I think we're all looking forward to is a federal framework for autonomy. There are signs that the transition team has already been working on that, and they have said that they want to implement it as a top priority. Whether it appears in the first week or maybe the next 3 months, don't know. But what if they did, as one of the first things they announced in the first week, they've created a federal framework for autonomy. That would be a big jump for Tesla. Clearly, people are now seeing Tesla as the leader in autonomy. That was a debate. People are debating that for so long, but one after another, all of these CEOs. We had the CEO of Xiaomi. We had the CEO or the ex-executive at Huawei. We had Comma AI guy come out and say this. We had Jensen Huang say this. We had just Uber CEO say this. Tesla is the leader in AI. It's now becoming more regularly or kind of recognized. So now they come out with a federal framework for autonomy that will benefit most autonomous companies, but mostly Tesla as well. Couldn't that be happening? That's what I've been hearing, that it can actually be happening as soon as next week, even possibly.
I mean, it could. Me personally, I feel, I mean, I don't think that part, like, I feel like that part of it has just kind of been priced in at this point.
Priced in. Yeah. You think it's already built in. It's assumed that it's happening.
Exactly.
I'm not so sure that it's already built in.
Well, I don't know. I think at this point it's more so, I mean, look, Brian was saying he still has that critical disengagement, right? In that intersection, I think you're talking about. It's like, I don't even know how to describe it. It sounded weird when you're talking to me about it, but it's clearly critical disengagement if it's trying to go in the middle of traffic. So that's an example. Yeah. You brought up George Hotz. Well, George Hotz also said he still thinks it's, several years away from having robotaxis, which, he only did a 30-minute drive. And we also already have Waymo out there, so I'm not really sure how that's a cogent statement. But I think to see Tesla stock really react.
Just to be clear, he said that they are 2 years away from Tesla.
No.
I don't remember him saying that Tesla is 2 years away from a robotaxi.
No, he said that it's still years away, is what he said, from having that. But nevertheless, my point is, I think, unless you're curious about when are we going to hit like 450 again or 480, I don't think that's what you mean. I think for Tesla really to move again, you're going to have to see either new vehicles or you're going to have to see signs of them launching their own robotaxi network.
Yeah. Okay. We were just talking about next week.
We're at that point.
So we're going to see this thing. You don't think you think it's already built in. Oh, that's fair. Okay, now we've got the earnings call. That's coming on the 28th or 29th. I can't remember exactly which day. It's a couple of weeks from now. When that happens, some people are thinking that there could be some big announcements. Alexander was positive about it, Alexander Merz saying that, there's a reason why they didn't do it on the 20th, which is what they normally would have done. Number one, well, because there's the inauguration happening. Number two, because there's the Chinese New Year happening. So they pushed it off. But maybe they did that also because there's some bigger news that they want to be announcing at the time. Obviously these are all guesses and at this point, but Are you guys expecting the earnings call to be again built in? They already knew the numbers. It's all going to be normal, nothing fancy, no major announcements, just reiterating the same things that they've already said last earnings call.
So I had wondered why it was on the 29th instead of the 20th. I forgot that there's all those other things going on. I think we are getting up on due to see an announcement for the intermediate compact or sub, mid, the Model 3 or Y based, more affordable car. I don't know if it would come that early. I don't know if it would come right before earnings, but it wouldn't surprise me. What am I expecting?
Well, can you just be clear about that? Because they just launched the new Model Y. And so it seems to me unlikely that they would launch a new car within a month of this. But do you mean to say that they're going to announce the date when they're going to unveil it? They're going to actually
I don't know. I don't know. I think you're right that I think they'd be crazy to announce it prematurely, but it's entirely possible that it isn't premature and that as soon as the Model Y refresh is in motion, that they're ready to get that also in motion. If it's something reasonably simple that doesn't require substantial structural changes, then it can work. Then it can be done, implemented very quickly. In terms of earnings, what I always tell people when they ask is I say Tesla will likely narrowly beat expectations. So of course the stock will drop because the market is just irrational.
Yeah, it's always does that, seems like. Yeah. Expectations, Nick?
Like mainly around earnings.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm still sticking in my hat that I think there's going to be a potential licensing agreement. Look, I'm either wrong and everyone's going to be like, yeah, we never thought that was right. Or it's going to be like, holy shit, how did Nick figure that out? It's just dumb luck.
Mm-hmm. I think you said this several weeks ago, right? You said that with the earnings call, it seems to be the time when Elon seems to bring up the licensing. At the last earnings call, he will say something, right? We're in discussions, or we've now in discussions with two of them. We only want 1 million car companies that can do 1 million a year. In this case, you're thinking that maybe this is the time that they're going to announce that they have some partnerships. It makes sense that if they did it, it could be at that moment in the earnings call. Although I think that earnings call, I would say that Elon only brings it up to give you an update. But if it was truly an announcement of a partnership, why do it in an earnings call? They might just announce it at any time.
I mean, like for example, like I don't envision he'd be like, Honda has signed a deal with Tesla to whatever. I think he would say something more along the lines of, we have reached an agreement with a OEM, a major OEM who will license FSD. We're still ironing out a couple more things, but when the time is right, we will host a spaces where we'll discuss the agreement. Just the way he had Jim Farley on, all that. Like, I think it'd be something like that.
Yeah.
So a question I have for you guys is, what are we expecting for stationary storage revenue since we had a quarter with record deployments?
A lot.
I have no idea, right? It's lumpy. But do you think that it's because the deployments were high, then the Q4 revenue should also be high?
That's my expectations because a lot of the revenue is tied up in final deployment. So, and it's not counted as shipping. It is not deployment. Electrification is deployment. You do get some money before full deployment. There are, I think, 4 or 5 tranches at which some form of payment is due, and they're clearly outlined in the purchase contract, which is online. You can look it up and find it. It's spelled out very clearly, but it's I think we're going to see a good numbers, and I think the margin is going to be fantastic, and I think that's going to help
show up in the Q4. The way I'll answer that is I asked Larry Goldberg and Søren Basher tracks this, and they have their forecast. They both say that it's almost a certainty that Tesla's 2024 is going to be over $100 billion of revenue, and that's because of energy.
Brian, when you say good margins, do you mean in aggregate or just energy?
I mean, in energy, but it's a lot of money. It's enough money that we might see it overflow into the greater numbers, into the overall total. But I mean, in megapack, because the costs are not going up on megapacks, and the price hasn't been reduced recently. So if anything, the margin might still be expanding until the next round of price cuts.
Sometimes I love the things you say.
Good. Sometimes.
We know.
Okay. Okay. So we've got you got the Model Y. Okay. You got the Model Y release. It's good news, right? In the sense that it looks like so far it's positive, or at the very least, it's kind of flat. However, uh, but the other bigger news is that they did a really nice transition. It looks like from the existing Model Y to the new one in China. They had a nice separation between the launch version and existing Model Y. And far from cannibalizing the older Model Ys, it's actually looking like a big launch success. The next big news is that they seem to about to announce that it's going to be launched in Giga Berlin, like soon, if not today. But even if it's just within the same month, that's pretty incredible. That's just unheard of. And then we're already seeing, Model Ys being tested here in the wild in California. So this is good news. There was some news this morning, and I don't know how accurate this is, saying that Tesla China is going to have to shut down the Model Y production for 3 weeks to kind of refactor it so they can produce this new Model Y much more. Seems like a long time. Did you see that? I don't know how accurate that is. It was another Bloomberg report.
I didn't see it. Bloomberg's track record is not the best. They are they have a penchant for sharing things that stand to depress the value of the stock a bit. If I'm being polite enough to them, they've said a lot of things in the past that are just ridiculous. So we've already seen Model Y Junipers in China being shipped out on trucks like a month ago. So that story to me doesn't pass the sniff test.
Yeah.
Hey, Herbert, just real quick, I just want to loop back and correct something that I was saying. Um, George Hotz did not say 2 years specifically. What he said was, as impressive as my 30-minute drive was, the software crashed once, made it, and it made a maneuver that would have gotten us pulled over right away if a cop was watching. There's 3 to 4 orders of magnitude to go to human level. If you chart out Tesla's pace for 3 to 4 orders of magnitude, that equates to 2 to 4 years.
Okay. Well, that's where he might be wrong, right?
From.
Yeah,
What?
that's where he might be wrong because
I'm just trying to be consistent with where that's coming from. I'm not. Yeah.
No, I'm glad you clarified that because that's his estimate, and now you've got Elon saying and Ashok saying that we're going to have as safe as a human within
This
3
quarter.
months.
Yeah.
3 months in this quarter, and they are likely already using the next few versions of the app for version 14 and version 15. They could already be using that now. Very likely they are. Plus the escalation in compute and data. So that we don't know, right? We don't know who's right or who's wrong. But Elon just yesterday even retweeted a post saying this is what exponential looks like in an FSD, FSD tracker data showing highway miles going skyrocketing 750% higher with the version 13. So he goes, this is what exponential curve or exponential improvement looks like. So maybe we will see another 5x improvement,
Yeah, I think there's a big, I think 13 is just mind blowing. How I don't think a human can drive smoother than what 13 drives. I'm not saying that it's never had a disengagement, but I'm talking about the smoothness of it. I think it's like it drives so freaking well. But that's that's before we have this expanded parameter count, before the context window has been expanded. And so that to me, it's like we haven't actually seen 13 yet. It's the appetizer. These are the hors d'oeuvres going around. We haven't seen the main course, the main event yet. And so I think that's what they're experiencing is the main event.
Yeah, that's why I think the earnings call is going to be very important, because if they show any signs of any kind of backtracking on the creation of the cybercab or the launch of the commercialized unsupervised versions of FSD, if there's any signs at all there, that means maybe they're not seeing the growth. But the opposite is true too. If you hear them confirm that we're still on track to launch these unsupervised commercial, which is what you heard Elon say just a few days ago, that we're still on track with the cybercab. In fact, we're already building the cybercab or something like that. These are signs that they feel like they've solved it and they're on a way. And right now, that is kind of every signal we're hearing from them is that they're still on track.
So I'm going to agree with Nick on the smoothness of 13. I know I'd commented on it on a video I made weeks ago, but I'd forgotten. And you're absolutely right. It is smooth. The lane changes are natural. They're at more appropriate times, but the starting, the stopping, the turning are the kind of smooth where you would have to tell your driver, hey, I might throw up. Can you drive real steady? And that's what I think you need for an unsupervised robotaxi system, is something that just gives you peace of mind and comfort. Now, Elon saying it'll be safer than a human driver in a very short amount of time feels like the promises we've been made before that never came true. So what has changed? Well, the answer is the amount of data that they're gathering is greater than ever, greater than last year by almost 2 million vehicles. And the amount of compute they have has expanded dramatically. And as the edge cases get smaller and smaller, there's more compute that can be dedicated to smaller problems. So there are material changes that lead to this confidence. Whether or not it actually happens is another matter. Until something is solved, you don't know for sure when it will be solved. But my confidence has never been higher.
I got a little funny analogy for you guys. I used to work at a pizza restaurant when I was in high school. And in the morning, we'd make these big batches of dough. And when we'd make these big batches of dough, then we'd have to roll them up and put them in Tupperware. But we'd have to cut different sizes out for small, medium, large pizzas. So we'd cut them, we'd roll them, put them in Tupperware. Well, you'd always weigh them out, right? But you'd get to a point where you've done this so many times that you didn't necessarily need to weigh it. Like you'd weigh every few, just make sure you're still on track. But you knew essentially what 10 ounces felt like. You knew what 15 ounces felt like, and you could just roll them out and go. And I think like if it's your first day working at the pizza shop, you can't do that. Which I equate that to like Elon when he's first like working on this problem, trying to make predictions, how he sees it. But after you have more time under your belt and understanding how things work, like you start to get a better sense of timelines and rate of progress and what things look like. You just have a better feel for it. And I think you're starting to see that from across the board with Ashok and Elon. And that's why a lot of the things they've been saying lately have been, I think, a lot more towards the predictable, or if they're off, it's like, hey, it's like 3-4 days later, you get something. And I think they're just getting a much better handle on what's happening and how it's working, and they get a good feel for it is what I'm seeing.
I think that's entirely fair. I think Ashok has been very good about his timelines. The September ones, when he said by the end of August, you will have these, I think it was 10 items. We got all 10. Some of them weren't until the very last day. I saw people on X saying, it doesn't count as FSD on Cybertruck unless I get it on my Cybertruck. And of course, everybody got it on that day. There were some subsequent targets that were missed a bit. We know that an update to FSD for hardware 3 by the end of the year didn't go wide by the end of the year. But it missed by very little.
Okay, so you've got Ashok, right? And so we all really trust when he says it. And so far, every time he's given us a list of features by a couple months from now, it has happened except for that description of that example that you gave, Brian, in a few days, right? Then you got Elon, and everybody thinks he's way off. So when you hear Elon say that we're going to have 50,000 robots next year, 50 to 100,000, is that yet another totally wild, like, don't count on it? So one side of it, me goes, yeah, it's Elon. Maybe he's way off, right? And the other side is like 50,000. it's not like, okay, it's not like, you know what I mean? It's such a big number that if he is off, how likely is he off by 50,000? You know, is it likely that that could, of course it can happen. It just seems like if he's off, it's going to be off by like, you know, 10, they only made 10,000 instead of 50,000 next year. Doesn't matter. That's still a big giant number of 10,000 to me. Do you guys treat that, the 50,000, 100,000 as nothing? Or do you think, Jesus, in order to make 50,000 next year, if that truly is his goal, and that is his big goal that he gave to the team, they would need to already be ramping up production this year. They would have to have suppliers nailed and started to be signed and figured out already if they can do that next year. They have to design lock it and so forth. You know, from what I've seen with the bot, it looks like it is very close to design lock. And that's sort of the first step is, does this even look like that it's the form factor is going to go, or there's still so much work? It seems that they're very close. So, you know, where do you guys take a statement like that?
On bots, I am clueless. The tech is moving so quickly that my fear is they would design lock version 1, begin ramping the factory, and by the time the 10,000th unit is out, they're like, man, we really need to move to version 2. So I don't know how quickly it's moving and when you reach the minimum viable product, but I'd be curious to hear what you guys think.
I mean, I'll tell you how I think about it. The way I think about it is, let's just focus on FSD. Like, I'm telling you how I think about it as an investor. Just focus on FSD. Let's just get FSD going. Let's get Robotaxi going. Let's start building out the cyber cab. And if you focus on that, and the bot is just like in the background, it's like the ultimate option play, you know, long leap, if you will. But it all starts with autonomy, is the way I see it. And so I'm not really too concerned about what Elon's predictions are as far as that. I am one that thinks it's actually probably really accurate. I don't think they have to worry about suppliers. I think they're going to make the majority of the parts in-house, personally. So I don't know. I don't see why he would be off by that much. I mean, and I think you need to make a lot of them to learn and iterate. Like, I think there's a certain point, I think there's only so far you can go with a design that until you have thousands work in the factory, are you like, okay, this made sense when we were only testing it in these type of situations, but we didn't even think about testing in this type of situation. We need to adjust this. And I think you'll only know that when you've got thousands of them out there. Like, we've heard them talk about, you know, a lot of these EV manufacturers, they don't know what it's like to have a battery that's been out there for 100,000 miles. They'll learn the things that they don't know yet, but you have to have that time, you know, time under tension to figure out what you don't know.
I'm actually opposite of you, completely opposite in the sense that as always, we have different thinking here. I look at the bot. It's the bot for me, not autonomy. Autonomy, I'm not ready to make this statement yet, but there could be a point when I'll say to you that I have more confidence that the bot will generate more money earlier than autonomy. Autonomy, they can do pilots this year. They can try to expand it. And I'm not saying that it won't be able to do 20 cities next year. That's easy to do because there'll be 20 cities easily jumping up and putting their arms up. But in terms of generating the actual revenue, you'll get more from the bot sooner. Now, you just said that takes 1,000 or 2,000. Well, that's where they're working on this year. So how many cybercabs are they create this year? Now, they don't need to because they can use Model Ys and 3s to show you the autonomy works. But in terms of the bots, they're planning to do thousands this year. Then next year, the 50,000. And so this idea of, you know, having to formalize and finalize the design, they're always going to improve the design, but you need one that you're going to go mass market, just like they finally figured out which, you know, Cybertruck design they're going to go with, which Model Y revised version they're going to go with. So it's coming out and it's here. And the likelihood that a bot can be successful in doing certain tasks is a lot lower than people. It's a lot higher than people realize versus, sort of robotaxi. So, you know what I mean? It's like that close. It's that close where both are happening at the same time. And yet I actually have more confidence that the bot will be successful, lower chance of it to fail than autonomy.
I'll take the other side all day.
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
So what else? What else, boys? What
Yeah.
else we
So
talking
when I hear Elon say 50,000 next year, I don't take it with face value. He could be really wrong. Until I hear Milan Kovac say something about how many bots that they're making, until we see signs and signals that they're actually, design locked it, or they're going to actually make the numbers he's saying that they're making, that's when I'll be much more confident. But when he says 50,000 next year, that is a massive number. That isn't just a small number. So it feels like, that's a little bit of a, that's crazy. But yeah, it could still be very much a stretch goal.
Yeah, but
it's
but
very
if he
likely a
said
stretch goal.
100,000, if he said 100,000, you'd be like maybe 50,000, not 100, right?
No, I get 50,000, 100,000 is the same number to me.
They're very different.
They're massive numbers.
Can I borrow $50,000?
Can I borrow 100? I'll give you 50.
They're
When I
just,
pay you
you know what I
back.
mean? Like it's a step change from 1,000 to 10,000 to then 50 to 100,000 to then a million and so forth. It's still in the same magnitude range.
But you
Yeah.
could say same for 10,000 to 50,000.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would. Yeah. Like once you can make, tens of thousands, that means you're really committed to a scaled delivery of a certain product.
So how many do you think they'll produce in 2025?
Well, he said it was 1,000. Some people
what
are
do
saying
you think?
4,000, and I don't remember. I don't know where they're coming up with the number 4,000, but I heard him say thousands. I don't know
Well,
why
I'd
people
like
are
to-
thinking 4,000. I don't know where they got that from.
I would like to talk about Semi because it is coming. I think we will see first units out of the factory, the new Giga Semi factory, in the first half. I think first quarter is a little too optimistic now, but I think first half is absolutely happening. I think the design is locked. I think the specs are good. We've seen it out and testing in the hands of real customers running real routes. What do you guys think the impact will be? And I would ask Nick, because I've already asked Herbert this. Do you have any guess on what customers will be paying for this thing?
Oh God. Finger in the air depends on which vehicle, but don't they go for anywhere from just in general semis? Don't they go for anywhere from like 250 to 500,000 a piece?
They can. They can.
Yeah.
It like you said, it does vary quite a bit. A day cab is obviously vastly cheaper than a fancy sleeper, but I think under 200 will still get you a pretty fantastic Class 8 truck. And I think if these cost double what a diesel hauler costs, they will still sell in tremendous volume while they get work on getting the price down.
Well, how many do you think they'll be able to make in like what do you think production rate looks like?
Out of the gate or eventually?
Let's say end of 2025 or just even eventually. Yeah. Who cares about ramps?
Well, okay. Eventually, the factory is stated to have a capacity of 50,000 per year. And that seems like a reasonable ceiling for two reasons. One, that's already the whole U.S. market is only 250,000. That's a big chunk of it. 20% market share would be fantastic. And the other problem is that's 40 gigawatt hours of cells they would need. And it's going to take some time to expand even to that point, let alone beyond that point. And people have said, right, but the world exists outside of the U.S. Yes, it does. But the North American market, I don't know how many would be sold into Mexico. I think there are infrastructure challenges that would make it less than ideal. And Canada's trucking market is not massive enough to warrant a substantial increase in capacity. And I think they would want to localize production in other places, Berlin, for example, Shanghai, for example. just to make it, just to shorten the transit distance and keep everything diversified.
So okay, so let's say 50,000 units.
I could see a 50,000 run rate by the end of 26.
Okay. And
Run
let's say
rate, not for the full year, but
let's say they sell at 500,000 each. That's
sure.
25 billion, 25 billion revenue.
And that might be, and 500,000 might be a little high. 350 to 400 might be more realistic, especially the early ones might cost more, but I can see it getting down to 350, eventually 250. But the original 150 to 180 pricing we saw at the unveil, well, that was a long time ago. That was 2017. That was in the before times.
It's crazy to think, but like when you just do that math, it's like it's not as much of a needle mover in the big scheme of things.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
What I would be very interesting with the semi could be the robo trucking. So once they release and show you that it can do full self-driving and it's highway, and they show you it can do robo taxing, there are a lot of reasons why many states would approve robo trucking first than they would, let's say, a robo taxi service, because it's a lot easier, it's a lot safer. You can do these convoys, and you can just showcase that this thing it's already, you and I, we all drive autopilot on highways now, and we feel very comfortable with that. It's the next thing that is probably going to be approved nationwide. It could happen really quickly, is robo trucking. There's a lot of support for that.
I have a question for both of you, which is, if FSD is available for the semi-truck on a unsupervised basis, how much do you lease that for per month? Forget selling it, and forget $100. This is now a commercial product. How much does it cost?
I think you'd base it all on tonnage.
That's interesting. But because I could see that exceeding the revenue from sales, certainly exceeding the profit from sales. Yeah.
So it's tonnage per mile. Yeah.
So what you're saying is it would cost more to move Yo Mama.
All right. Any new factories, new Megapack factories that's going to be announced? I have a feeling that they're going to be announcing a Megapack factory shortly, next quarter, certainly before June. They will not only do one Megapack factory, they may announce two. I know that you'll say the economy, make sure that they're careful about their investments, but a Megapack factory is much different than a Gigafactory. Megapack factory costs them $200 million. It generates within a year after building this thing. Doesn't take a long time. It generates billions of dollars immediately. Every country needs one. It needs to be very localized. You can't just create a Megapack factory in the US and ship it to other countries as easily as you could cars. It's the size of a semi. Like, these things are very heavy. So it's almost
When do you
pretty.
think? When do you think?
I'm saying at least one announcement of a Megapack factory before June, but I'm actually willing to say two, that they might actually announce two. Why two? They've already launched Lathrop. They've already got that to full scale. They just launched China. They're working on making that full scale. And then, so why wouldn't you now be able to say not just one more? You can do two announcements. Now, some people will say they may not need to, because China can be expanded to more than just the equivalent of Lathrop. It could be double the size of Lathrop. So maybe they don't need to do it there. That could be why it's not two. But certainly there's going to be one more announced.
I'm just going to steel man the other side. Just not because it's what I think. Just it's I think it's good exercise. But the reason why you maybe not June, you wouldn't do something like this. One or two is irrelevant, but you did Lathrop. You learned a lot from that. Now you built in China. You'd probably want to let China get up and running, get the full ramp, learn about what mistakes you made in building that factory before you build your next one, right? So you can keep iterating rather than just immediately building and potentially making the same mistakes. And that's not a new thing. I mean, Elon's talked about that. Lots of people have talked about that. So I would say that could be a reason why they might not rush into it. Maybe it's not June, maybe it's December. Uh,
Sure.
but but I agree with you. We need more eventually.
The demand is so high right now. It's tremendously needed. It's going to be the bottleneck. Elon has said so. That is the bottleneck. And so they don't have time to wait. They need to start building these things and pumping them out, even for their own use, for Tesla's own use.
The backlog is years long, and that's at today's pricing. As the price continues to fall, the backlog could get even longer. You can adjust that. The reason I think you wouldn't announce one is because you don't have a ready supply of the correct, reliable LFP cells that would go into it.
That's
But
good.
That's a good
yeah,
answer. Yeah.
That's a good steel man.
because it'll consume a whole lot of those. But in terms of when they would announce it, what we've seen with both Lathrop and Shanghai is they don't announce it until they're ready to break ground. And that was also true with Giga Berlin and Giga Shanghai. Less
Mexico.
true with Mexico. Less true with Mexico. We all are still quite disappointed there. The Megapack factories are very low risk because, like you said, a couple $100 million, that's Shanghai pricing. Depending where it goes, you could get that pricing in other countries. But also the facility, should you decide you no longer need it. Let's say you build one in Australia because Australia has a voracious appetite for Megapacks, but you could reach a point where Australia factory no longer makes sense because we've deployed enough. That building can be sold. That building can be given back to the land. It's still a useful building, as opposed to an automotive factory where the next guy, I hope you're building cars because otherwise just tear it down. It's not for you. This is still a good multi-use kind of industrial space. So yeah, I think it is substantially de-risked. And like Herbert pointed out, you can recover your entire upfront cost in the first year. So there are a lot of reasons this could work. And then, of course, the workaround there is, does the country allow effortless importation of LFP cells while they develop their own? So that would be another way to look at candidate countries.
So I titled this as Total Domination, right? Would you guys agree that Tesla is dominated the electric vehicle market?
Partial domination, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Would you agree that Tesla has dominated or will be dominating autonomy, robots? What about energy?
I have more clarity on energy, and I would say they already are. There are studies I've seen that said
people say
Megapacks don't work except for the Tesla ones.
No, but they say, oh, really? So they're saying that this is a commodity. Chinese makers, there's lots of competitors. They can all make Megapacks, not that hard. Batteries, stack them together.
Mm-hmm. But Tesla has a reliability factor that is so far in excess of the competition, which is something the competition will catch up on at some point, but they're not there yet, which is why Tesla is able to command substantially better margins. As a reminder, I do have a follow-up show after this where I will be answering questions and comments that have come in. I'm going to be heading out right now to take a quick 5-minute break. And when this show ends, it should automatically redirect you. Maybe not. If not, head over to my channel and find it. And I'll see you guys in a bit.
Yeah. What about you, Nick? Do you think that the domination of these markets that I just mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tesla tends to dominate most markets that they're in. Yeah, I mean, not necessarily solar panels.
Yeah, they lost solar panels.
they-
But don't you think that they might see they lost solar panels. That business did not go anywhere. That is a fact. But could they revive that? I don't think they will. I don't think
they will.
Personally, I'm thinking they're no longer going to focus on homes. They might do it for businesses and corporations because it's part of the semi sale, right? You sell the semi, you sell the Megapacks, you sell the solar panels, so it's self-generating. But I don't see it. They're going back to solar in homes. I think they're going to do solar farms. Is what I've been saying for the last year or two. But
Yeah, the thing about solar panels, like I don't say it's like, I mean, it's essentially a solved problem. Like there's not a, like, when I think of Tesla, I think of a company that tries to solve really hard problems and push the world forward. Solar panels have been solved. Like it's not. I mean, they can always be more efficient. You can always work on that, but like you're playing a game of iterating very, very tiny. Unless there's a revolutionary breakthrough to be made there, I don't see it in Tesla's best interest to be focused there.
Okay. So that's solar panels, physical AI. Anything else you think that Tesla's going to dominate in? That's pretty well,
Yeah,
you
market
can see
cap.
it in the cards. Market cap?
Yeah.
When are you predicting? So you had Elon say it's going to be larger than Apple and Saudi Aramco combined. He didn't give a date though. When is Tesla going to become the largest company, better than Nvidia, if everything continues to move up too, right? If Nvidia continues to progress.
That's a good question. Earliest, sometime in 2027.
27.
More realistically, probably 29, 30. I think that'd be probably a little more
Won't
realistic.
surpass. So that means it needs to, well, let's say we're at $1 trillion right now. It needs to 4x to be equivalent to Nvidia, 3x, right? Something like that, depending on 1.2, right? From current valuation.
And execute.
2028, it's going to happen way sooner.
When do you think?
Well, it's all the bots, dude. You have 50,000 to 100,000 bots. You can't, 50,000 to 100,000 bots. The reason why that number is so important is, and supposedly, let's say when you were saying 10,000, because the difference is 10,000, Tesla can use all 10,000 for themselves. 50,000 to 100,000, they don't need that many at the beginning at this point. And they would need to have suppliers, but they would, if everything goes according to plan, they will be selling that already. They'll have partners lined up. They'll be announcing partnerships with, let's say, Target or Pepsi, these current partners that they have, or even new ones. Then at that point, you're selling the product. You're selling it. You're making revenue. 50,000, 100,000 is a small number, but it's massive in terms of impact. And it shows you what this is going to be. And it shows you, especially when he says, okay, we built 50,000, 100,000. We have these factories. Let me show you the factories. Can you imagine seeing a factory filled with thousands and thousands, like 10,000 bots inside the factory, and they're like manufacturing it, like in a line or whatever it is going to turn out to be?
Manufacturing themselves will be crazy.
Yeah, that part. I keep asking everybody that question, right? Do you need bots to make bots, or can you just use industrial robots to make bots? And the answer so far from everybody, experts I'm saying, is that you do need bots to make bots.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about like QA, final inspections, like there's always, all these fixed robots. Over time they start to creep, and you have to go back and you have to readjust them.
Yeah, so that's why if he says 50,000, 100,000 next year, now let's say he's off by year, next year 2026. So by 2027. You're going to have a business model. You're going to have hundreds of thousands of bots. It's going to be more than 4 times what we're today.
Wait, so you think they're going to be the biggest company in the world by 2027?
27, yeah. I agree with you. 27. I agree with you. Yeah, 27.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying 26.
Much sooner.
No.
Yes, you said that.
Didn't you say? I don't know. I felt like you said.
I said earliest 27.
Earliest, yeah.
Sometime in 27. I said
No,
probably more like 29, 30.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's the bot, dude. Come on. You will crawl to me. You will not. That's a little too harsh. You'll come back and tell me
I'll kiss the ring. Don't worry. I'll kiss the ring.
Yeah. Bots,
if you
it's going to shock everybody how much faster they will roll out. Yeah.
If you 4 or 5x my net worth in the next 2 years, I'll kiss the ring. I'll say Herbert has the greatest prediction of all time. Herbert is.
I mean, yeah. So by the way, just to be very clear about the bot prediction, the reason why, and I've never actually given a prediction. I was not actually the group that said it was Randy Kirk and Scott 1 Point said that we're going to expect 1,000 bots last year, and that didn't happen. But the reason why we didn't see 1,000 bots in 2024 was because they decided to create a new version with the integrated hands. and that slowed down the kind of the next version of the bot. Now we're going to hear 1,000 bots this year, 2025. And that's where, and then there'll be a version 3 that will then be the one that's going to go 50,000 next year. But that's why they decided to do that, to just do one more iteration of the bot. But they could have. The other thing is the confidence level that you have of whether or not you can do tasks.
How do we know that?
We don't, but it's just, looking back and now hearing Tesla saying, okay, we're going to do this new model where we're going to slow down the bots until we get their hands correctly, the way we want it. 22 degrees of freedom built in the arms here. That was,
yeah, I don't know. I think it's a stretch to say, oh, they would have done this, but then they decided last second, we're going to do this whole other approach. And so now we're not going to do 1,000. And when I ask, how do we know that? And it's like, well, I mean, it was my guess. So that's obviously what happened. It's like, I don't know. Like, we don't know anything. No one knows anything. That's all we know. We know that we know nothing. And the sooner people realize they know nothing, the better they'll be at investing.
There you go. That's a good way to end it. Thank you so much, Nick. Thanks, everybody. Stay on. You'll see Brian and answer your questions.
Cheers.